This video is for one of my viewers that's still having issues with his air pressure. I turn my key on, and I've got primary and secondary pressure here. Now, if you have changed your air dryer and you're still having the same issue where you're not getting pressure either to your primary or your secondary, it could be a couple of different things. And another diagnostic way to do it is pump your air back down with your brakes. Start your truck up. See, I got my low air warning on. Now, what happens on these trucks is your primary is going to build up first, and it's going to come on up to 100 psi, and then you're going to start getting air into your secondary. So you're not going to get any secondary air whatsoever until your primary has built up. So if you fire up your truck and it's airing up your primary but not your secondary, wait until you get up to over 100 psi, and then your secondary will start going up. And if you run it and your secondary is not going up, then there's a couple of things it could be. It could be that you have a blockage in a system that I'll show you in a moment. It'll be coming out of your air dryer, or it could be that your air dryer, you've just got a faulty unit. It's probably a rebuild unit or something like that, and the new unit could also have an issue in it. But anyway, I'm going to show you how to diagnose that in just a moment. But you can see I got my primary and secondary airing up now that I've hit 100 psi on my primary. But that primary gauge has got to hit 100 before it airs up. Now, if you listen, while this truck is airing up, you're going to hear a sneeze. It's like a little puff of air once the air governor kicks out. Going up. There it was, that little puff of air. Now, that told me that the governor is working just fine when that kicked off. Now, if this is airing up and you don't get that sneeze and it just keeps going, then you've got a massive air leak in your secondary system. You probably got a line busted in too, or you might even have a hole in your air tank that is not allowing that secondary to build up. And I'll show you how to find out in just a moment whether or not you've got a massive air leak or if it's your air dryer. Okay, this is the old unit that I still have laying around. Now, if you flip to this side, you can see the electrical connector, your main line coming in from your air compressor, and your mounting points for your bolts. These are where the bolt heads are. And if you roll it this side, these are your two lines right here that come out of the air dryer over to your air tanks in the air junction box. And you see PRI, that's your primary line. So if you got air in your primary system on your gauges, you don't need to check this side. If it's airing up over 100 psi, 120, 130, you're fine. The secondary side is the one that you're having issues with. And you can see it says secondary right there, SEC. Anyway, what you want to do is air your truck up, let all the air out of it, and air it up to about 90. And then hop underneath your truck and disconnect this hose. You're just going to push the collar with your fingers, pull on the plastic line, it'll pop out. Then you want to put your thumb over that fitting and hold. And push hard and just hold. And see if that thing will build up more than 10 pounds of pressure. And you're going to know this because it's going to get up to a point where you're not going to be able to hold that pressure. And if this gets to the point where you cannot hold pressure in there, or it builds up to where it'll sneeze air or put a big puff of air out of here, then you know you're building up to full pressure. And when you take your thumb off of that, it's going to blow a bunch of air out. If it doesn't blow that much air out, whenever you're to the point where it's built up completely or you can't hold it anymore, if it just gets to where there's not very much pressure coming out of this, once you're over 100 psi on this, then this unit is bad. This whole unit right here would be bad. It's not building up. And if you bought a new one, I'd take the son of a gun back and tell them that this unit, this air dryer unit, is no good. But if you're getting a lot of air coming out of here, you've either got a blockage or you've got a massive leak in your secondary air system. And if you have a massive leak in your secondary air system, it might actually be very difficult to detect, because you're not going to have like a tiny little bubble thing or whatever. I mean, you're going to have a lot of air blowing out, and it's going to be such a big leak that you're not going to be able to get enough pressure into that secondary system to actually have an audible sound of the air blowing out. And if you got a leak and it's not going over 10 psi like it's going on your truck, then you're going to have to get underneath there and check every line until you find the one that's busted or popped loose. And it's going to be a big line, probably 3/8 or a 1/2 inch line is what's going to be the cause. Okay, now we're going to go underneath the truck, and I can show you where you could have a possible blockage or a possible issue underneath the truck. Well, we are on the passenger side of the truck right now. Let's turn this light on there. There we go. Okay, we're on the passenger side. Now, I'm airing, let's say I'm airing up my truck right now. If you look, you've got 3 lines coming out of the secondary side of the tank. This line right here, that one is closest to the back of the truck on your secondary tank, which is on your passenger side, just underneath the passenger seat. You see the passenger seat come down, and boom, here's the tank. This is the secondary tank on these 587 Peterbilts. So you've got your truck running, you're airing it up, you push in on this collar and pull this line out, and put your thumb on the end of that line and let it build up air pressure while the truck is running, and see if you can get air in your secondary system. Again, 10 pounds is easy to hold, but 130 is not. So you let this thing build up, and if your truck is kicking out the governor with that sneeze, then you wait until that thing sneezes, take your finger off, and it should blast a bunch of air out of this line right here. If you're not getting that blast of air out of there, then it's between here and your air dryer, if you're getting air blasting out of your air dryer with the same test. So you'll have a issue between here and there. And if you do not have that issue between here and there, and you're getting all kinds of air going into your tank, plug that thing back in, lock it up, disconnect this one, and put your finger over top of the fitting, not the line, because this is coming out of your tank into your system. And if you're getting air built up there, and then you're going to have a leak between here on out into the rest of the truck, or a blockage. And if you have plenty of air coming out of here and you're building up on your gauge, then check this system, this third one up here. Disconnect, plug it up, see if you get the pressure in your tank. If you do, then you've got a leak or a blockage from here out. Truck, this is kind of awkward and everything, but we'll get it. Anyway, this is the air dryer as it's mounted on the truck. You can see the lines coming in. You can see the main line coming in from your air compressor and your electronic connector. Anyway, again, this is your primary, this is your secondary, and if your issue's in your secondary system, this is the one you want to disconnect and put your finger over, and with the truck running, you hold your finger over that and let that pressure build up and see if you can get more than 10 psi built up. And I already explained how you kind of check that. You hold it on there and see if you can hold the pressure back. If it builds up a ton of pressure, then you know you've got a blockage somewhere else. Now, where's my hand? There it is. Okay. You want to follow this line up, and you can see my hand back here. You see that green line? Let's turn the light on. There we go. Okay, you see the green line coming up right here. And you follow this green line up, and you see that green line goes up into that junction box. Okay? Anyway, if you don't have any secondary air pressure, you want to check that junction box right here. And you're going to look for the green line or the line coming out of here to your secondary tank. And the way you find your secondary tank is, if you look, you see that green line coming out the other side, and it goes over to your secondary air tank. On this truck, it is mounted on the other side of the frame behind the cowling above the step on that side. There's a step. Right above the step, there's an air tank way up in there that I cannot see from where I'm at. But you air up your truck, and you yank your bleeder valve on that side and see if you have any air in that secondary tank. If you don't have air in that secondary tank, then you possibly got a blockage right here. And you're probably going to have to blockage in this unit here, and you're probably going to have to replace it. But before you replace this unit, you want to check that secondary line there all the way up into that junction box. You might have to remove that line and check it for leaks. Make sure it's not broken. And if it's not broken, you want to check that other green line going from that box there over into your secondary tank. And then, of course, you want to check that secondary tank and make sure there's no holes in it. Because there could be a hole in that secondary tank. They will eventually rust through. But if you don't have any broken hoses or anything like that, and you don't have any holes in your tank, then you want to fire it up again, disconnect your green line again up at this end, and see if you got air coming out. And you only do that if you're getting plenty of air pressure out of your air dryer. If you're getting plenty of pressure here, then there's something going on after your air dryer going to your secondary tank. And it's either a broken line or a plugged up line or a I can't think of what that's called right now, but a bad, I call it a junction box. But if you got plenty of air pressure coming out of that going to the tank, then you might just have a hole in your tank, or the fitting on the end of that line that goes into the tank could be plugged up as well. So anyway, hopefully, you know, this will help you out. You know, I'm not an expert at this by all means. I mean, you know, I do diagnostics by, you know, hillbilly thoughts and stuff, and I kind of think of air systems in these trucks like water lines in a house. And if you got flow out of somewhere up to a point, but you have no flow after that point, you got a blockage. Or if you got flow from here and it's going up there just fine, and you have nothing coming out of there, you got a blockage. Or you've got a bust, and it's, you know, a broken line that big is just really hard to find if it's leaking that much, because you can't hear the air coming over the sound of the truck running, and you're not going to get no air there unless the truck is running. So yeah, it's a difficult thing to find if you have a massive leak of that size. But if you got a smaller leak, get you a bottle of Windex, just cheap Windex, $1 bottle, or, you know, a spray bottle with soap and water in it. And if you got a small leak, you just go and come down here and spray your fittings in your hoses and look for bubbles, which is what I'm doing now. I've got a small air leak and I'm losing 20 psi in an hour, which is acceptable on DOT standards, but I just don't like losing that much air pressure and have to air up the truck every morning. So anyway, we'll see you guys later. I'm going to be underneath here for a couple hours checking airlines for a tiny little leak. Any more questions, please feel free to ask. I'll get to you as soon as I can and do the best I can to help you. Hey, would you look at that? I found my air leak. See where it's bubbling out right there? And that is a quick connect fitting for a 1/2-inch line, and I can actually get a 1/2-inch compression fitting and replace that. So it's about a $5 fix and save me a couple $100 shop fee for that one, and it's less aggravation on me. Awesome.